Hello, my name is Melanie Koch-Benham. I'm a special ed school improvement specialist at Buffalo Public Schools. The title of my lit review is Factors Impacting Online PD of Teachers. So what interested me most about this topic was the fact that currently I am presenting professional development at Buffalo Schools, and the problem that we constantly find is the fact that PD is being provided only to a small portion of teachers due to the fact of the financial burden that it causes the district. We can only reach a select few teachers that seek out the professional development opportunities. So we're kind of limited on our ability to reach a larger audience due to the fact of PD being so expensive, paying the teachers, custodial staff, administrators, etc. So we want to explore other options for providing PD to a larger population of teachers and to start to look at other options as far as scheduling. Obviously, scheduling is a big issue with schools and trying to find the time to do professional development. So if professional development could be done online, it can be done at various times if it was done online. The research questions are: what methodologies are being used to examine the learning of participants in online PD? What instructional practices and level of technology impact learning of teachers in the online PD? And how is learning acquired using these online instructional practices and modes of technology? How is that being used? So, looking at all of the research that I read for this lit review, there were various methodologies that were being used. Quantitative, qualitative, mixed methods. So here are just a few that came up in the specific research studies that I read. Questionnaires, surveys, interviews, participant observation, non-participant observation, artifacts, retrospect, think alouds, screen capture, videotaping, virtual revisit, some quantitative methods of ANOVA and Pearson correlation, randomized control sample, and pre-test, post-test. Some theoretical frameworks that kept coming up in the research studies that I read were social constructivist theory, and that's just basically looking at emphasizing the collaborative nature of learning. Social cultural theories of learning, which is learning is a social process, and transformative learning theory. That's really looking at Maslow's theory of the learners introspect and re-introspect into their sensory experiences. So a couple of themes that came up with learning outcomes of online PD. Some factors that impacted that learning were active participation, learner collaboration. The actual delivery method that was used would impact the learning of the participants, the content of the PD, and the technology skills of the participants. So what do I mean by active participation? Within the research studies, they talked about different ways that the presenter of PD would actively engage the participants of that PD. So looking at videos of expert teachers and critiquing them would be one way to be actively engaged. Leading discussion boards, video reflection, blogs, podcasts. Problem-based learning, that's where they give them a problem and they have them discuss online the options for solving that problem. And then it was emphasized in the research that time to utilize the technology and time to be introduced to the technology is a must for active participation to be able to be done. Because if you're not able to use the technology effectively, you're not able to actively participate to the portion that you will have learning outcomes. Learner collaboration was another key component in the learning. Making sure that the participants are actively participating the whole time in discussions with others involved in the PD. And this communication could be done in a variety of modes online, but they are successful when they're able to share those ideas and reflect on practice, and also share curriculum applications and become part of an online community. These online discussions can happen various ways, asynchronous, synchronous, but the point of the collaboration is it must be structured, and must have clear expectations, because if it's not structured, the participants will talk about anything rather than the content of the PD. So it really has to be, the expectations need to be made clear from the beginning. Some of the discussion and the research talked about different methods of delivery and the learning outcomes of that method of delivery. As we know, PD can be done asynchronous, synchronous, a blended approach, which could be both asynchronous and synchronous, or can be a little bit of in-class. And then last but not least, an independent, self-paced PD. So that's where there really isn't any interaction with others. It's just somebody basically guides themselves through videos or through PowerPoints, etc., and then answers questions, etc. So looking at asynchronous PD, obviously that means that it is not done in real time. It can be done at separate times. So one advantage is the scheduling is much easier for asynchronous PD. Also, it creates equal opportunity for participants to respond, as well as reflection and stored conversations can be an advantage of this type of PD. Follow-up analysis and formative assessment are another positives to asynchronous PD, online PD. Some negatives could be not receiving an immediate response. So sometimes participants get frustrated when they don't get an immediate response. Also, posts can be time-consuming within blogs, or within discussion posts can be very time-consuming on the participant. Synchronous PD, which means in real time, there's some advantages of that, which include when you're introducing and collaborating on assignments, when you want instant feedback or feedback immediately on something. Some drawbacks can include it can be challenging for the instructor of that PD, because it's very difficult to coordinate technology-wise and get everybody online at the same time, get everybody's microphone working properly, etc. It could be very stressful and very time-consuming and hard to coordinate for that facilitator of that PD. And it requires a lot of preparation. A blended approach combines the best of each of the synchronous and asynchronous and in-class methods. So it can be beneficial in that it includes all the benefits of each of those types. But it can be very, the drawback is it can be very time-consuming for the facilitator to manage. Independent self-paced PD is an advantage because you have access to a variety of PD from across the country. It can be used as diagnostic tools. Some drawbacks is it doesn't include the dialogue with peers and facilitators and collaboration. And basically, there's not that reflection and discussion from the other approaches. So the research recommended blending the independent self-paced with other forms of delivery options, such as asynchronous, synchronous, or in-class with the independent, so that it's not so isolating and the participant doesn't feel so alone. Another component with learning outcomes is content. The content really impacts the learning. It must be aligned to curriculum and district standards and expectations, because if the goals of a district are separate than what's in the PD, that will deter the participant from wanting to participate. And also, you want to design the content in a way that's easily accessible to the teachers. So you don't want anything that's too complicated to read or too complicated to digest for teachers, being that they don't have a lot of time and things need to be user-friendly within the content. Also, the last two components, the last two bullet points here, those PDs, those research studies at Weckler and Barclay, and the three listed below, are proven to be effective with increasing content knowledge. So we really have quite a few research studies proving that there has been increasing content knowledge within an online PD setting, which is a very positive result of online PD. Last but not least is technology skills. In order to have learning outcomes in online PD, the participants need to have technology skills. If they don't, it will seriously impact their learning and their participation. So you want to make sure that schools provide education on how to use those technology components before participating in the PD. Or set aside or troubleshoot that first session of the PD to make sure that you teach the participants how to effectively use the technology so that they don't feel stressed out and can participate fully and won't have the technology as a barrier to their success and their learning in the course. So last but not least, provide them with time to play with the technology in a safe atmosphere so that they don't feel stressed out at high stakes grading or anything like that. So start off with allowing them some time to play with the technology in a non-threatening way. Some gaps that were found in the research is researching the alignment between the PD, online PD itself and state and district standards. And as we know, standards are constantly changing. They just came out with some new standards. So looking at, are they aligned? And then next, looking at time constraints on learning and the outcome of online PD. Looking at the effects of parent collaboration from online PD, and then last but not least, looking at learning outcomes of blended courses. We don't have a lot of research on those blended courses, online courses, and the effects of those courses. In conclusion, I feel that there will be an increase in online PD in the future. Being so, that we should definitely provide more research on the gaps, especially those areas that we really need to look further. And we also need to investigate the impact of that PD and different practices that are used within the PD, as well as delivery modes and which delivery modes and designs are the most effective for participants. And I really do feel that it will be worth the investment of time and research because these types of PDs are not only proven to be effective with increasing content knowledge, as I mentioned before, but also cost effective and flexible on schedules, teacher schedules, which can be a nightmare, obviously, because teachers have pretty crazy schedules. And then last but not least, it will reach a larger audience of teachers. Thank you so much. I would appreciate any feedback, and I look forward to seeing you soon.